Welcome, take a moment, breathe, and settle your mind, because what you're about to hear is not just another message, it's something deeply personal. This is a space where purpose is awakened, where truth is spoken without fear, and where your spirit is reminded of who you are and why you are here. This channel exists for one reason: to ignite something within you that the world may have tried to silence. Here we talk about purpose, identity, spiritual growth, and the unseen patterns shaping your life. Not in a complicated way, not in a distant way, but in a real, human way that reaches your heart and challenges your mind. Because you are not here by accident, and neither is this moment. There are times in life when you feel like you're just moving, just existing, just going through days without fully understanding why things are happening the way they are. You try to make sense of your journey, but some pieces just don't fit. You wonder why certain struggles repeat, why certain feelings stay, why certain desires won't leave your heart no matter how hard you try to ignore them. And if you're honest, there have been moments when you questioned yourself, moments when you felt behind, moments when you felt misunderstood, moments when you looked at your life and quietly asked, what is really going on with me? But what if I told you there is more to your story than what you've been seeing? What if I told you that even the smallest detail about your life, something as simple as the year you were born, can carry a pattern, a rhythm, a hidden insight into the way your life unfolds? Not to control you, not to define you, but to awaken you. Because the truth is, nothing about your life is random. The Bible reminds us in Jeremiah 1:5, before I formed thee, I knew thee. That means before you ever took your first breath, before anyone ever spoke your name, your life already carried intention. Your timing, your placement, your journey, it was all known. And yet, many people live their entire lives without ever truly seeing themselves. They react instead of reflect. They move without understanding. They struggle without clarity. And slowly they begin to accept confusion as normal. But you were never created to live in confusion. You were created to walk in understanding. And that is why this message matters. Because today, we are not just talking about numbers. We are talking about patterns that may have been silently shaping your life. We are talking about tendencies that may explain why you think the way you think, feel the way you feel, and respond the way you respond. And as you listen, something inside you may begin to shift. You may start recognizing yourself in ways you never have before. You may start connecting dots that never made sense until now. You may start realizing that what you thought was random was actually revealing something deeper. And that realization can be emotional. Because when truth meets your reality, it doesn't just inform you, it moves you. It reaches places inside your heart that logic alone cannot touch. It reminds you of moments you forgot. It explains feelings you couldn't name. It gives language to things you've been carrying in silence. And for some of you, this may be the first time you truly feel seen. Not by people, but by truth. And that matters. Because when you begin to see yourself clearly, everything starts to change. You stop blaming everything around you. You stop questioning your worth. You stop feeling lost without direction. And you begin to step into awareness. And awareness is powerful. Because awareness is the beginning of transformation. The Bible says in Proverbs 4:7, wisdom is the principal thing. Therefore get wisdom. That means understanding is not optional. It is essential. Because you cannot grow beyond what you refuse to understand. And today, you are choosing to understand. You are choosing to look beyond the surface and ask, what does this mean for my life? And that question alone sets you apart. Because not everyone is willing to ask it. Not everyone is willing to grow. But you are here. And that means something. It means there is a desire in you for more. More clarity. More purpose. More direction. More truth. And that desire is not accidental. It is a sign that you are ready. Ready to see differently. Ready to think differently. Ready to move differently. Because once you gain understanding, you cannot go back to living the same way. You cannot unsee what has been revealed. You cannot unknow what has been uncovered. And that is where your journey begins to shift. Not in a loud, dramatic way, but in a deep, internal way that changes everything over time. So as you listen to this message, don't just hear it. Feel it. Let it reach you. Let it challenge you. Let it awaken something inside of you that has been waiting for this moment. Because this is not just information. This is revelation. And revelation has the power to transform your life if you allow it. Stay with me, stay open, and most importantly, stay honest with yourself. Because what you are about to discover may truly surprise you. There is something deeply fascinating about numbers, something that quietly speaks to the human spirit, even when we don't fully understand it. From the beginning of creation, order was established, seasons were measured, time was structured, and patterns were formed. Nothing was left to chance. Everything was intentional. And when you begin to look at your life through that lens, you realize that even the smallest details about you carry meaning, including the very year you were born. Now listen carefully, because this is not about superstition, and it is not about placing your identity in numbers. Your identity is rooted in your Creator alone. But what we are exploring is the idea that patterns can reveal tendencies, and tendencies can point you toward purpose. The Bible itself says in Ecclesiastes 3:1, to everything there is a season and a time to every purpose under heaven. That means your arrival into this world was not random. You were born into a specific time frame for a reason. And when you look at the last digit of your birth year, what you are really doing is identifying a cycle, a rhythm of time that may reflect certain spiritual inclinations, challenges, and strengths that show up repeatedly in people born under that pattern. Not to limit you, but to awaken you. Some of you have been wondering why your life feels the way it does, why certain battles seem to follow you, why certain desires burn so strongly inside of you. And you have questioned yourself, thinking something is wrong. But what if nothing is wrong? What if you are simply becoming aware of a pattern that was always there? If your birth year ends in 0 or 1, there is often a sense of leadership embedded in your spirit. You may not always feel confident, but there is something inside of you that resists being controlled. You think differently. You question systems. You feel uncomfortable when you are forced to follow without understanding. That is not rebellion. It is a sign that you were designed to initiate, not just participate. In the Bible, we see in Genesis 1:1, in the beginning, everything starts somewhere. And people with this pattern often carry the burden of beginning things, even when it's difficult. But here is the challenge. You may also struggle with loneliness, because pioneers are rarely understood at first. And if you are not careful, you will start doubting yourself just because others don't see what you see. That is why you must stay rooted spiritually, because leadership without alignment can turn into pride, and pride will ISO. Late you faster than anything else. If your birth year ends in 2 or 3, there is often a strong emotional and relational depth in you. You feel things deeply. You care about people. You may even find yourself being the one others come to for comfort, even when you are hurting yourself. There is a nurturing quality in your spirit, something that reflects compassion and connection. The Bible says in Romans 12:15, rejoice with them that do rejoice and weep with them that weep. That is you. You carry empathy in a way that others don't. But your challenge is boundaries. Because when you feel everything, you can become overwhelmed. You can start carrying burdens that were never yours. And if you are not spiritually grounded, you will confuse your assignment with your emotions. You are called to love, yes, but not to lose yourself in the process. If your birth year ends in 4 or 5, there is often a strong sense of movement and change in your life. You are not meant to stay stagnant. You are restless when things become too predictable. There is a creative energy in you, a desire to explore, to build, to experience. The Bible reminds us in Isaiah 43:19, behold, I will do a new thing. Now it shall spring forth. That verse resonates with your spirit because you are wired for newness. But your challenge is consistency. Because while you are great at starting new things, finishing can become difficult. And if you are not careful, you will mistake motion for progress. Just because you are moving does not mean you are growing. You must learn discipline. You must learn to stay planted long enough for fruit to develop. If your birth year ends in 6 or 7, there is often a deep spiritual awareness in you. Even if you didn't grow up in faith, you feel drawn to deeper questions about life. You sense things. You notice patterns. You are reflective, sometimes even quiet, the Bible says. S in Psalm 46:10, be still and know that stillness is where you thrive. You are not easily satisfied with surface level understanding, but your challenge is overthinking. You can get lost in your own mind. You can question yourself to the point of paralysis. And sometimes you isolate not because you want to, but because it feels safer. You must remember that faith requires action. You cannot think your way into purpose. You must walk into it. If your birth year ends in 8 or 9, there is often a strong sense of responsibility and completion in your life. You carry weight. You may feel like you have to mature faster than others. You often find yourself in situations where you are expected to handle more than you think you can. But there is strength in you, a quiet resilience. The Bible says in Galatians 6:9, let us not be weary in well-doing, because in due season there is a harvest. Your challenge is pressure, because when you carry so much, you can become exhausted. You may feel like no one understands the weight you bear. And if you are not careful, you will start believing that everything depends on you, but it does not. You were never meant to carry life alone. Now understand this clearly. These patterns do not define you. They do not limit you. They simply reveal tendencies that you can either align with purpose or allow to drift into confusion. Because at the end of the day, your life is not controlled by a number. It is guided by your obedience, your faith, and your willingness to grow. But isn't it interesting how something so small can reveal something so deep? You see, many people go through life unaware. They react instead of reflect. They struggle without understanding why. But awareness is powerful. When you begin to see yourself clearly, you begin to move differently. You stop blaming everything around you, and you start taking responsibility for what is within you. And that is where transformation begins. Because once you recognize your tendencies, you can start aligning them with truth. If you are a natural leader, you must learn humility. If you are deeply emotional, you must learn strength. If you are constantly moving, you must learn discipline. If you are deeply reflective, you must learn surrender. Everything has a balance. The Bible says in Proverbs 4:7, wisdom is the principal thing, therefore get wisdom. That means understanding yourself is not optional, it is essential. Because you cannot manage what you do not understand. And some of you for the first time are starting to understand why your life has unfolded the way it has. Why certain patterns keep repeating. Why certain struggles feel so familiar. And instead of feeling discouraged, you should feel awakened. Because now you have insight. And insight leads to change. But here is where it becomes deeply personal. You must ask yourself, what have you been doing with what you were given? Have you been using your strengths? Or have you been hiding from them? Have you been growing through your challenges? Or have you been running from them? Because awareness without action changes nothing. And there are people listening right now who feel like they have wasted time. Like they should be further along. Like they missed their moment. But hear this clearly. Nothing is wasted when you are willing to learn. Every experience, every delay, every mistake can become a stepping stone if you choose to grow from it. The Bible says in Romans 8:28, all things work together for good, not some things. All things. But that only applies when you align your life with purpose. So even your patterns, yes, even your struggles can work for you instead of against you. But you have to decide. You have. E, to decide that you will no longer live unconsciously. You have to decide that you will no longer ignore the signs within you. You have to decide that you will grow even when it is uncomfortable. Because growth is not easy. It requires honesty. It requires discipline. It requires letting go of old habits and stepping into new ways of thinking. And that process can feel painful, but it is necessary. Because you were not created to stay the same. You were created to evolve, to mature, to step into greater levels of purpose. And every part of your life, even something as simple as the timing of your birth, can serve as a reminder that there is more to you than what you have been living. There is more strength in you than you realize. There is more wisdom in you than you have tapped into. There is more purpose in your life than you have discovered. But you must be willing to see it. And as you begin to reflect on this, as you begin to recognize the patterns in your own life, don't become fearful. Become intentional. Because awareness is not meant to trap you. It is meant to free you. Free you from confusion. Free you from limitation. Free you from repeating cycles without understanding them. And when you are free, you begin to live differently. You begin to make decisions with clarity. You begin to respond instead of react. You begin to walk with purpose instead of drifting through life. And that is where everything starts to change. And when everything begins to change, it does not always look dramatic on the outside at first. In fact, most transformation is quiet. It happens in your thoughts before it shows in your actions. It begins in your awareness before it manifests in your reality. That is why many people miss it. They are looking for loud breakthroughs, but real growth often whispers before it roars. You begin to notice the difference in how you respond to situations that once controlled you. The same pressure comes, but it no longer breaks you the same way. The same voices speak, but they no longer define you. The same patterns try to pull you back, but something inside you resists, not because you're stronger on your own, but because you're becoming aligned with something greater than your old self. And that alignment is powerful, because when you align your tendencies with truth, your weaknesses begin to lose their grip. Not instantly, not perfectly, but progressively. And progress is what matters. The Bible says in Philippians 1:6, "He which hath begun a good work in you will perform it." That means what has started in you is not meant to remain unfinished. There is a process taking place, even when you cannot see it fully. Some of you have been too hard on yourselves. You've been measuring your life based on where you thought you should be instead of recognizing how far you have come. You forget the battles you survived. You overlook the growth that has already taken place. And because of that, you feel stuck when in reality, you are evolving. Growth does not always feel like growth. Sometimes it feels like confusion. Sometimes it feels like pressure. Sometimes it even feels like loss. But that does not mean you are going backwards. It may mean you are being stretched beyond what is comfortable so you can step into something greater. Think about this. Every pattern you carry has the potential to either build you or break you. The difference is not in the pattern itself, but in how you respond to it. If you are naturally inclined to lead, you can either become a person of influence or a person of control. If you are deeply emotional, you can either become compassionate or overwhelmed. If you are driven by change, you can either become innovative or unstable. If you are reflective, you can either become what? Ice or stuck in overthinking. If you carry responsibility, you can either become strong or burdened. The same tendency can produce two completely different outcomes. And that is why awareness must be followed by discipline. Because discipline is what transforms potential into reality. The Bible reminds us in 2 Timothy 1:7 that we are not given a spirit of fear, but of power, love, and a sound mind. That sound mind is not automatic. It must be developed. It must be guarded. It must be trained. Because if you do not take control of your thoughts will take control of you. And many people are living under the weight of patterns they never took the time to understand. They repeat cycles, not because they are meant to suffer, but because they are unaware. They keep making the same choices, reacting the same way, falling into the same traps, and then wondering why nothing changes. But once you see it, you cannot unsee it. And that is where responsibility begins. Because now that you are aware, you are accountable. Not in a way that brings condemnation, but in a way that empowers you. Because responsibility is not a burden, it is a privilege. It means you have the ability to change your direction. It means you are not stuck. It means your future is not locked into your past. And that realization alone can shift everything. There are people who have gone through life believing they were limited by their background, their environment, or even their own personality. They said, "This is just who I am," without ever questioning whether who they were had been shaped by patterns they never examined. But you are not called to remain who you were yesterday. You are called to grow. You are called to renew your mind daily, as it says in Romans 12:2. Be not conformed to this world, but be ye transformed by the renewing of your mind. That transformation is T, external. It starts within. It starts with how you think, how you perceive, how you interpret your experiences. And once your mind changes, your life begins to follow. But here is the part that many people struggle with. You cannot grow without discomfort. You cannot break patterns without resistance. You cannot step into something new without letting go of something old. And letting go is not easy. It means releasing habits that once felt natural. It means walking away from mindsets that once felt safe. It means choosing a higher way even when your emotions are pulling you in another direction. And there will be moments when you feel like giving up. Moments when the old patterns seem easier. Moments when you question whether the effort is worth it. But those moments are part of the process, because growth is not about perfection. It is about continuing even when it is difficult. It is about choosing discipline over comfort. It is about trusting that what you are becoming is greater than what you are leaving behind. And as you continue in this process, something begins to happen. You begin to recognize patterns not only in yourself, but in the situations around you. You start to see things differently. You start to discern what is beneficial and what is harmful. You become more intentional with your time, your energy, your decisions. And that level of awareness changes how you live, because you are no longer reacting blindly. You are responding with understanding. The Bible says in Hosea 4:6, "My people are destroyed for lack of knowledge." Notice that it does not say they are destroyed because they lack potential. It says they lack knowledge. That means ignorance can be more dangerous than weakness, because when you don't know, you cannot grow. But when you begin to understand, everything shifts. And this is why even something as simple as reflecting on the timing of your birth can become meaningful, not because it controls you, but because it invites you to think deeper about your life. It pushes you to ask questions. Why do I respond this way? Why do I feel this so strongly? Why do certain patterns keep repeating? And when you ask those questions sincerely, you open the door to wisdom. And wisdom changes everything. Because wisdom helps you see beyond the surface. It helps you recognize that not every feeling should be followed, not every thought should be believed, and not every opportunity should be taken. It teaches you discernment, and discernment protects your future. There are people who have delayed their purpose simply because they lack discernment. They said yes to things they should have avoided. They stayed in places they should have left. They trusted voices they should have questioned. But once you begin to grow in awareness, you start to move differently. You become more selective. You become more focused. You begin to understand that your time and energy are valuable, and you cannot afford to waste them on things that do not align with your purpose. And that realization brings a new level of discipline, because now you are not just living, you are living intentionally. You are no longer drifting, you are directing your life with purpose. And that is powerful, because a life with purpose is guided. And when you are guided, you are not easily shaken by every situation that comes your way. You begin to stand firm. Not because life becomes easy, but because you become stronger. The Bible says in James 1:3, "For that the testing of your faith produces patience, and patience leads to maturity." That means every challenge you face has the potential to develop you, but only if you respond correctly. Beck, Orr's challenges do not automatically produce growth. They produce growth when you allow them to teach you. And some of the very struggles you have faced are connected to the patterns within you. Not to destroy you, but to refine you. To shape you into someone who is stronger, wiser, more prepared. But refinement is not comfortable. It requires pressure. It requires moments where you feel stretched beyond your limits. And in those moments you have a choice. You can resist the process, or you can embrace it. You can complain, or you can learn. You can run, or you can grow. And that choice determines your outcome. Because your future is not just something that happens to you, it is something that is shaped by the decisions you make daily. And those decisions are influenced by your awareness. That is why this matters. Because once you begin to understand yourself, you gain the ability to make better choices. You start operating on impulse. You start operating with intention. You begin to recognize what aligns with your purpose and what distracts from it. And that clarity is powerful, because clarity removes confusion. It removes hesitation. It removes the constant back and forth that keeps people stuck. And when you are no longer confused, you can move forward with confidence. Not arrogance, but confidence rooted in understanding. Confidence that comes from knowing who you are becoming. And as that confidence grows, so does your ability to handle life. Because you are no longer easily shaken by every opinion, every setback, every unexpected situation. You begin to stand firm. You begin to trust the process. You begin to walk with a sense of purpose that is not dependent on circumstances. And that is where true strength is developed. Not in the absence of challenges, but in the ability to remain steady in the midst of them. And as you continue in this journey, you will begin to notice something else. You will begin to outgrow certain things. Certain conversations will no longer interest you. Certain environments will no longer feel comfortable. Certain habits will no longer feel right. And that can feel strange at first, because growth often creates distance between who you were and who you are becoming. But that distance is necessary, because you cannot step into a new level while holding on to everything from the old one. And as you let go, you make room. Room for new understanding. Room for new opportunities. Room for new levels of purpose to unfold in your life. And that process continues. And as that process continues, there comes a point where you begin to recognize that your life is no longer being driven by accident or impulse, but by intention and awareness. You begin to notice that the same situations that once confused you now reveal themselves clearly. The same patterns that once trapped you now stand exposed before you, no longer hidden, no longer disguised. And this is where true maturity begins to take root, because maturity is not about age. It is about perception. It is about seeing beyond what is obvious and understanding what is actually happening beneath the surface. It is about recognizing that every situation carries a lesson, every delay carries a purpose, and every challenge carries an opportunity for growth. The Bible says in Proverbs 3:5, 6, "Trust in the Lord with all thine heart, and lean not unto thine own understanding. In all thy ways acknowledge him, and he shall direct thy paths." Now understand this deeply. There will be moments where your patterns try to pull you back into relying only on what you feel, only on what you think, only on what you see. But growth requires you to move beyond that, because your understanding is limited, but divine direction is not. And many times, the very patterns you have identified within yourself will be tested. Not once, not twice, but repeatedly. You will face situations that trigger your natural tendencies. If you are prone to fear, you will encounter moments that challenge your courage. If you are prone to control, you will face situations where you must learn to release. If you are prone to overthinking, you will be placed in moments where you must act without having every answer. This is not punishment. This is refinement. Because you cannot overcome what you are never forced to confront. And some of you have been asking why certain situations keep showing up in your life. Why the same type of challenges appear again and again, just with different faces, different environments, different circumstances. But the core remains the same. It is because the lesson has not yet been completed. And until it is completed, the cycle continues. But once you become aware, once you begin to understand your own tendencies, you gain the ability to break the cycle. Not by force, not by willpower alone, but by alignment. Alignment with truth. Alignment with purpose. The Bible says in John 8:32, "And ye shall know the truth, and the truth shall make you free." Notice, it does not say truth will entertain you. It does not say truth will always comfort you. It says truth will free you, and freedom sometimes requires confrontation. It requires you to face parts of yourself that you have avoided. It requires you to acknowledge habits that you have justified. It requires you to be honest in a way that is uncomfortable but necessary, because you cannot change what you refuse to confront. And this is where many people stop. They become aware, but they do not act. They recognize their patterns, but they do not discipline themselves to grow bio. End them. They see the truth, but they choose comfort over transformation. And because of that, they remain stuck, not because they lack potential, but because they lack commitment. But you must decide that you will not stop halfway. You must decide that awareness will lead to action in your life, because action is what produces change, not intention, not desire, not even understanding alone. Action. The Bible reminds us in James 2:17, faith, if it hath not works, is dead. That means what you believe must be reflected in what you do. You cannot say you want to grow and then continue living the same way. You cannot say you want change and then resist the process that creates it. There must be movement, and that movement will not always feel comfortable, because you are stepping outside of patterns that have been familiar for years. You are breaking cycles that may have been reinforced over time. You are choosing a new path, even when the old one feels easier. And that requires courage. Not loud courage, not dramatic courage, but quiet, consistent courage. The kind that shows up daily. The kind that chooses discipline when no one is watching. The kind that keeps going even when progress feels slow. And as you continue in that consistency, something begins to shift within you. Your confidence becomes more stable. Not based on external validation, but based on internal clarity. You begin to trust yourself, not in a prideful way, but in a grounded way. Because you know you are growing. You know you are aligning. You know you are no longer living unconsciously. And that trust changes how you move. You stop second-guessing every decision. You stop overanalyzing every step. You begin to walk with a sense of direction that is steady and focused. And even when challenges arise, you handle them differently. Because now, you are not reacting from old patterns. You are responding from new understanding. And that difference is everything. Because reaction is driven by impulse. But response is guided by wisdom. And wisdom is what sustains you. The Bible says in Ecclesiastes 7:12, wisdom is a defense. That means wisdom protects you. It guards you. It keeps you from making decisions that could lead you away from your purpose. And as you grow in wisdom, you begin to see life differently. You begin to understand that not every opportunity is meant for you. That not every path leads to purpose. And that understanding allows you to become more selective. Not out of fear, but out of clarity. Because you realize that your life has direction and you cannot afford to be distracted. And distractions are subtle. They do not always appear as something obviously wrong. Sometimes they appear as something good, but not aligned. Something appealing, but not purposeful. Something comfortable, but not productive. And as you stay open, as you allow your heart and mind to remain receptive, something begins to happen within you that is difficult to explain, but impossible to ignore. It is like a quiet stirring, a gentle awakening, a sense that something you have been searching for is finally beginning to reveal itself. Not all at once, not in a way that overwhelms you, but in a steady and intentional way that draws you deeper into understanding. Because truth does not force itself. It invites you. It invites you to look again at your life, not through the lens of confusion, but through the lens of purpose. It invites you to reconsider the things you once dismissed, the feelings you once ignored, and the patterns you once overlooked. And as you begin to reflect, you may start to notice how certain aspects of your life have been consistent, almost as if they were trying to tell you something all along. Think about the moments where you felt different, moments where you couldn't fully relate to the people around you, moments where your thoughts seemed deeper, your emotions stronger, your awareness sharper. At the time, you may have felt isolated. You may have wondered why you couldn't just be like everyone else, why things affected you the way they did, why your perspective felt so unique. But what if those moments were not signs of something being wrong with you? What if they were signs of something being awakened within you? Because sometimes what feels like separation is actually preparation. Preparation for a deeper understanding. Preparation for a greater responsibility. Preparation for a life that requires you to see beyond what is visible. And this is where many people struggle, because they try to fit into spaces they were never designed to remain in. They try to silence parts of themselves that were meant to be expressed. They try to ignore the very things that make them unique, thinking it will make life easier. But ignoring your nature does not bring peace. It creates tension, a tension between who you are and who you are trying to be. And over time, that tension becomes exhausting. Because deep down, you know there is more to you. You know there is something within you that has not yet been fully understood, fully expressed, fully aligned. And that knowing does not go away. It stays with you. It follows you. It whispers to you in quiet moments, reminding you that your life carries more meaning than what you have settled for. The Bible says in Ecclesiastes 3:11, He hath made everything beautiful in His time, also He hath set eternity in the heart. That means there is something placed inside of you that longs for more, something that recognizes there is a deeper purpose beyond what you see on the surface. And that longing is not something to ignore. It is something to explore, because it is connected to your growth. It is connected to your awareness. It is connected to your purpose. And as you begin to explore it, you will start to notice that your life is not just a series of random events, but a journey filled with patterns that are meant to guide you. Patterns that reveal your strengths. Patterns that expose your weaknesses. Patterns that highlight areas where you need to grow. And when you begin to recognize those patterns, you gain something powerful. Clarity. Clarity about why certain things affect you the way they do. Clarity about why certain paths feel right while others feel wrong. Clarity about why certain struggles keep appearing in your life. And that clarity changes how you move forward. Because now you are not guessing. You are not wandering without direction. You are walking with awareness. And awareness brings responsibility. Because once you see something clearly, you cannot pretend you didn't. Once you understand a pattern, you cannot ignore it without consequence. And this is where growth becomes a choice. Not something that happens to you, but something you actively pursue. Because you can no longer say, I didn't know. Now you know. And knowing requires action. It requires you to make decisions that align with what you have discovered. It requires you to step out of comfort and into discipline. It requires you to confront habits, thoughts, and behaviors that no longer serve your growth. And that process is not easy, because comfort is familiar. Comfort feels safe, even when comfort is keeping you stuck. But growth requires you to move beyond that. It requires you to choose what is right over what is easy, to choose what is necessary over what is comfortable, to choose what leads to purpose over what leads to temporary relief. And that choice must be made daily, not once, not occasionally, but consistently, because consistency is what builds transformation. The Bible says in Luke 16:10, He that is faithful in that which is least is faithful also in much. That means your growth is not just about the big decisions. It is about the small daily choices that shape your life over time. The way you think, the way you respond, the way you handle pressure, the way you manage your time and energy. All of it matters, because all of it contributes to who you are becoming. And as you continue to make those choices, something begins to shift within you. You begin to feel more grounded, more focused, more aligned. Not because your life suddenly becomes perfect, but because you are no longer living unconsciously. You are no longer being controlled by patterns you do not understand. You are no longer reacting without awareness. You are living with intention. And intention creates direction. Direction creates confidence. Not the kind of confidence that depends on external validation, but the kind that comes from knowing you are moving forward, even if it is one step at a time. And that confidence strengthens you. It helps you face challenges with a different mindset. It helps you handle uncertainty with greater peace. It helps you remain steady even when things around you are unstable, because your stability is no longer based on circumstances. It is based on understanding. And understanding is powerful because it allows you to see beyond the moment, to recognize that what you are experiencing now is not the end of your story, but a part of your process. A process that is shaping you, refining you, preparing you for what is ahead. And as you continue in this process, you will begin to notice that your perspective on life changes. You stop seeing challenges as obstacles and start seeing them as opportunities. You stop seeing delays as failures and start seeing them as preparation. You stop seeing discomfort as something to avoid and start seeing it as something that leads to growth. And that shift in perspective changes everything, because your perception influences your actions, and your actions influence your results. So when your perception changes, your life begins to follow. And that is where transformation becomes visible, not just internally, but externally, in the way you carry yourself, in the way you make decisions, in the way you interact with others. People begin to notice something different about you, something they may not be able to explain, but they can feel. A sense of clarity, a sense of purpose, a sense of stability. And that difference is the result of the work you are doing within. Because real change always starts internally before it shows externally. And that is why this journey matters. Because it is not just about understanding a concept. It is about becoming a different person. A person who is aware, a person who is intentional, a person who is growing. And that growth does not stop. It continues, it evolves, it deepens, because there is always more to learn, more to understand, more to develop. And as long as you remain open, as long as you remain willing, as long as you remain committed, your life will continue to unfold in ways that you cannot fully predict. But you will be ready, not because you have all the answers, but because you have developed the mindset, the discipline, and the awareness needed to navigate whatever comes your way. And that readiness, that inner strength, that clarity, it all begins with a simple decision, a decision to see differently, to think differently, to live differently. And that decision, once made, sets everything else in motion. And once everything is set in motion, you begin to realize that your life is no longer something you are simply experiencing. It is something you are actively shaping. That realization alone shifts your entire mindset. Because now you understand that you are not powerless, you are not stuck, and you are not defined by what has already happened. You are being formed. And formation is a process that requires time, pressure, and intention. The Bible says in Isaiah 64:8, "We are the clay, and thou art our potter." And when you truly understand that, you begin to see your life differently. You begin to recognize that not everything you go through is meant to break you. Some things are meant to shape you. Some things are meant to remove what does not belong, to refine what is within you, and to prepare you for what you cannot yet see. But shaping does not always feel good. There are moments when it feels like things are being stripped away, moments when what once felt secure begins to shift, moments when you feel uncertain, stretched, even uncomfortable in your own life. And in those moments, it is easy to question everything, to wonder if you are losing control, to wonder if things are falling apart. But what feels like things falling apart may actually be things coming together in a way you do not yet understand. Because growth often requires disruption. It requires breaking old patterns. It requires removing what no longer fits. It requires creating space for something new, and that space can feel empty at first. It can feel unfamiliar. It can feel like you are in between what was and what will be. But that in-between space is where transformation pens. It is where your identity begins to shift. It is where your understanding begins to deepen. It is where your dependence moves away from what is temporary and toward what is lasting. And many people struggle in that space because they try to rush through it. They want immediate clarity, immediate answers, immediate results. But growth is not immediate. It is progressive. And if you rush the process, you risk missing the lessons. You risk repeating the same cycles. You risk stepping into something new without being prepared to sustain it. The Bible says in Habakkuk 2:3, "Though it tarry, wait for it, because what is meant for you will come in the right time." That does not mean you remain passive. It means you remain faithful in the process. It means you continue to grow, even when you cannot see the full picture. It means you continue to develop even when the results are not yet visible. Because what you are becoming is more important than what you are receiving. And that truth is difficult for many to accept. Because we live in a world that focuses on outcomes, on results, on visible success. But true growth is internal first. It is about who you are becoming when no one is watching. It is about the discipline you develop in private. It is about the mindset you build when things are not easy. And that internal growth is what sustains external success. Without it, anything you gain can be lost. Without it, anything you build can collapse. Without it, anything you achieve can feel empty. But when your foundation is strong, when your awareness is clear, when your discipline is consistent, you become stable, not easily shaken, not easily discouraged, because your strength is not based on what you have. It is based on who you are. And who you are is being shaped daily through your choices, through your response, through your willingness to grow. And this is where your patterns come back into focus, because the tendencies within you will continue to show themselves, not to control you, but to reveal areas that still need alignment, areas that still need discipline, areas that still need growth. And each time they appear, you are given another opportunity, an opportunity to choose growth over habit, an opportunity to align with purpose instead of reacting from instinct. And those opportunities are valuable because they are what allow you to break cycles. They are what allow you to move forward. They are what allow you to step into a new level of understanding. But you must recognize them. You must be aware enough to see them when they come. Because if you are not aware, you will fall back into old patterns without even realizing it. And that is how cycles continue. Not because you are incapable of change, but because you are unconscious of your actions. But now, you are no longer unconscious. Now you are aware, and awareness changes everything. It changes how you think, how you speak, how you respond, how you move. It brings intention into areas of your life that were once automatic. And that intention is what creates transformation. Because transformation is not just about what you do differently. It is about why you do it. It is about the mindset behind your actions, the understanding behind your decisions, the purpose behind your movement. And when your mindset shifts, your entire life begins to shift with it. You begin to see that your life is not happening to you. It is happening through you, through your awareness, through your alignment. And that realization gives you a sense of responsibility that is both empowering and challenging. Because now, you can no longer blah, me, everything outside of you. You can no longer say, this is just how things are. You begin to ask deeper questions. What can I learn from this? How can I grow through this? What needs to change within me so I can move forward? And those questions lead you to growth, because growth always begins with reflection, with honesty, with a willingness to look within and confront what needs to be addressed. And that kind of honesty is not easy, because it requires you to admit that there are areas where you need to grow, that there are patterns you need to break, that there are habits you need to change. But humility is not weakness. It is strength, because it allows you to grow. It allows you to learn. It allows you to become better. The Bible says in Proverbs 11:2, with humility comes wisdom, and wisdom is what guides you through life. It is what helps you make better decisions. It is what protects you from unnecessary mistakes. It is what allows you to navigate challenges with clarity. And as you grow in wisdom, your life becomes more aligned, more intentional, more purposeful. You begin to recognize what matters and what does not. You begin to focus your energy on what builds you instead of what drains you. You begin to move with a sense of direction that was not there before. And that direction brings peace, not because everything is perfect, but because you know you are moving in the right direction. You know you are growing. You know you are becoming. And that knowing gives you confidence. Not in a way that makes you feel superior, but in a way that makes you feel grounded, secure, steady. And that steadiness allows you to handle life differently. You are no longer controlled by emotions. You are no longer driven by fear, because your foundation has anchored. And when your foundation changes, everything built on it changes as well. Your decisions, your priorities, your mindset. Everything begins to align with who you are becoming. And as that alignment deepens, you begin to walk in a way that reflects it. Not perfectly, but consistently. Not without challenges, but with clarity. And that clarity continues to guide you, step by step, decision by decision, moment by moment. Because this journey is not about reaching a final destination. It is about continual awareness, continual alignment. And as long as you remain committed to that process, your life will continue to unfold in ways that reflect the work you are doing within. Because what is happening inside of you will always influence what happens around you. And that influence is powerful. It shapes your experiences. It shapes your outcomes. It shapes your future. So as you continue, remember this: nothing about your life is without meaning. Every pattern, every tendency, every challenge, every moment, it is all part of a process that is shaping you into who you are meant to become. And the more you align with that process, the more your life begins to reflect purpose instead of confusion. And if you are not aware, you will give your time and energy to things that slowly pull you away from where you are meant to be. But when you are intentional, you begin to guard your focus. You begin to protect your time. You begin to align your actions with your purpose. And that alignment creates momentum. Because when your thoughts, your actions, and your direction are in agreement, progress becomes inevitable. Not instant, but inevitable. And that is where patience becomes essential. Because growth is a process. It does not happen overnight. It does not happen in one moment of realization. It happens daily, step by step, decision by decision, choice by choice. The Bible says in Galatians 6:9, "Let us not be weary in well-doing, because in due season there is a harvest." That means what you are doing now matters, even if you cannot see the full result yet. Every disciplined choice, every moment of growth, every time you choose purpose over comfort, it is all adding up. And one day you will look back and realize that the person you have become is not the result of one big moment, but of many small, consistent decisions. And that realization will strengthen you even more, because you will understand that you have the ability to shape your life, not perfectly, not without challenges, but intentionally. And intention is powerful because it removes the feeling of being lost. It replaces confusion with direction. It replaces hesitation with clarity. And as you continue to walk in that clarity, you will begin to influence others as well. Because growth is not just personal, it is impactful. People will begin to notice the difference in you, not just in what you say, but in how you live, in how you respond, in how you carry yourself. And that influence creates responsibility, because now your life becomes an example, not of perfection, but of progress. Not of having all the answers, but of being committed to growth. And that is powerful, because people do not connect with perfection. They connect with authenticity. They connect with real growth, real struggle, real transformation. And your journey can become a source of encouragement for others, but only if you continue, only if you remain committed, only if you refuse to settle. Because there will always be a temptation to settle, to stop growing once things become comfortable, to relax once you reach a certain level, to assume that you have done enough. But growth does not stop. It evolves. There are always new levels, new challenges, new areas to develop. And that is not something to fear. It is something to embrace. Because it means your life has depth. It means your purpose is still unfolding. It means there is always more to discover, more to become, more to experience. And as long as you are willing to grow, your life will continue to expand in ways you cannot fully predict. But you must remain open. You must remain teachable. You must remain disciplined. Because the moment you stop learning, you stop growing. And the moment you stop growing, you begin to drift. But you were not created to drift. You were created to move with purpose, to live with intention, to grow with consistency. And every pattern within you, every tendency you have recognized, every insight you have gained, it is all part of that journey. Not to define you, but to guide you. Not to limit you, but to awaken you. And as you continue to walk in that awareness, to align your life with truth, to discipline your actions, and to remain consistent in your growth, you will begin to see something powerful unfold. A life that is no longer controlled by unconscious patterns, but shaped by intentional choices. A life that is no longer driven by confusion, but guided by clarity. A life that is no longer stuck in cycles, but moving forward with purpose. And that journey, it continues to unfold with every step you take. And as you stand at this point of understanding, something inside you should feel awakened. Not overwhelmed, not confused, but awakened. Because now you see that your life is not a random collection of moments, but a carefully unfolding journey filled with meaning, patterns and purpose. Even the smallest detail, like the last digit of your birth year, can serve as a reminder that nothing about you is accidental. You were born in a time that carries significance. You were given tendencies that carry potential. And you have been walking through experiences that are shaping you, refining you, and preparing you for something greater than where you are right now. But here is the truth you must carry with you. What you do with that awareness is what will define your future. You can ignore it and continue repeating cycles, or you can embrace it and begin to rise above them. You can remain comfortable in what is familiar, or you can step into the discipline required for growth. You can allow your patterns to control you, or you can align them with truth and purpose. The choice is yours. And that choice matters more than any number, more than any pattern, more than any past experience. Because at the end of the day, your life will not be determined by where you started, but by how you responded to what you discovered along the way. The Bible says in Deuteronomy 30:19, I have set before you life and death, blessing and cursing. Therefore choose life. That is the call placed before you even now. To choose growth over stagnation. To choose awareness over ignorance. To choose discipline over distraction. To choose purpose over passivity. And as you make that choice day by day, step by step, something powerful begins to happen. You begin to walk with clarity. You begin to live with intention. You begin to move with purpose. No longer drifting, no longer confused, no longer bound by patterns you do not understand, but stepping forward with a renewed mind, a strengthened spirit, and a deeper awareness of who you are becoming. And one day, you will look back, not with regret, not with confusion, but with gratitude. Gratitude that you chose to grow. Gratitude that you chose to understand. Gratitude that you did not settle for living unconsciously, but instead stepped into a life of purpose, discipline, and transformation. Because everything you needed to begin was already within you. You just had to see it. And now that you see it, everything can change.